Nearly half of New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions come from the agriculture industry, and with the government launching a committee to consider how we can cut our footprint, should the sector be concerned? Joining us now is Dr. Tim Mackle, Chief Executive for DairyNZ. Kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora,
First of all, the government has announced its committee members. What did you make of the announcement?
Well, the announcement's a positive step towards the zero carbon economy. We know that's a key thing for New Zealand. It's very happy with Jan Wright and we got Harry Clark and Susie Cure on there, all very experienced people. For us, we're just putting a reminder out too that someone who understands the farm system is really key, because when you're working in farming, it's all about the system. You can't just pull on one lever and expect everything else to stay the same. So if not this committee, the commission that gets put in place next year, we'd like to see that.
Well, at the very least, I mean, this committee will have the power to consult with farmers over the practicalities of instituting some sort of change, won't they?
Absolutely. And in fact, the Minister, James Shaw himself, has been very engaging with us so far, and he's been out on farms just recently, really getting his head around the complexities, if you like. So that's a really positive thing, Jack.
What sort of recommendations are you expecting are likely to come?
Well, one of the fundamental things they'll be considering is how agriculture is actually, whether it's incorporated into the emissions trading scheme or not going forward. In fact, what are the instruments they're going to use? So, you know, there's a lot on the table to deal with, and it's a big deal for New Zealand. We know that agriculture is a big part, as you say, of our emissions, and that's because, you know, we produce a lot of food against a small population for a lot of people around the world, and we're high renewable, and of course we're not industrialised. So there's a good reason for it, but we know we can do better. We're regarded globally very well in terms of how we do produce per unit of carbon our food, but we know we can do better. So we're keen, and we've got a lot of research going on to actually contribute.
Well, there's actually opportunity, isn't it? As you know, the world's population grows, the demand on our food sources becomes even greater. Transitioning into tech that allows us to have relatively low emissions in that sector is a great opportunity for New Zealand.
Huge opportunity, and we've been doing research for well over 10 years. Not just dairy, but remember it's a sheep and beef issue too, together with the government. And, you know, we're getting close to some really viable options now. Now, as other countries, their industrial and transport emissions decreases, because it's the first easy levers to pull on. Their agricultural emissions will form a greater part. They'll be far more interested in dealing with it too, and we could help them with our technology.
Okay, how do we actually make sure that we are at the very, the spearhead of that change?
Well, I think continuing with the research effort we've got on now, and that's been going on. And look, it's a tough nut to crack, and if it wasn't, it'd be done by now. But we've got to keep going with that. And we've got actually, I guess, the hearts and minds of our farmers and those who are contributing to them. We've been doing that since June last year with our Dairy Action for Climate Change plan, getting out, educating not only farmers but those who support them. We've got to keep up with that too. You
mentioned the emissions trading scheme. Is it time that agriculture was covered in the ETS?
Well, it's a difficult one. I mean, it's all based on whether you've got mitigation tools too. And agriculture is not in emissions trading schemes around the world either, for good reason, because it is a tough one to deal with. So look, it does rely on that, and that's why the science is key at the same time.
They've been flirting with the idea for a long time, though. I mean, I'm sure the sector itself has been expecting at some stage to become a part of the ETS.
Yeah, look, we know that this is a big issue, and it's one we've got to address. And in fact, if you go overseas to any farming or agricultural or dairy or conference, then actual climate change is the #1 issue talked about. We've obviously been focused on water quality for good reason in the last 5 to 10 years, and some good positive results are starting to show. We'll keep that up, more work to do, but we've got this issue too.
Would you accept any hit to profitability in order to bring down emissions?
Well, again, it's about understanding how far you can go, and it's getting that sweet spot between the environmental outcomes, the economic imperatives, and the social impacts on regions. And of course, regional economies are very important to this government too. So that's why this commission, this committee, in fact, is so key, because you've got to find that sweet spot where you actually...
Would that sweet spot allow for any hit in profitability? Well, just 5%, say.
Well, I mean, look, you know, that comes back to the current situation of farms. We're always trying to improve their underlying profitability to deal with issues like that. And so, you know, these are the things we've got to work through.
I mean, hypothetically, if we could say, you know, we're going to lose 5 or 10% in profitability, but we're going to dramatically reduce our emissions as a sector, is that the sort of thing that you think would be welcomed by farmers?
Well, I wouldn't say be welcomed, because at the same time, many of them are dealing with a very tough 2 years of low milk price and trying to pay back debt. We put $4 or $5 billion of debt on during that time. But at the same time, we know this is a big issue, and we know we have to deal with all aspects of farming, the issues that contribute to environmental outcomes, as well as people, animal care, as well as profit. And you've got to find a good balance.
All right. Thanks for your time this morning, Tim. Really appreciate it. Dr. Mackle from DairyNZ.